Yo, what is going on, guys? Hanging on Outdoors here. My name is Dimitri, back with another video. Thank you guys for stopping by, and if you're new here, welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to install a rest on your bow. Now, a lot of these tips that I'm going to be showing you will apply to basically any rest that you really put on the bow. However, I will be going into some things that are specifically for this rest, like how to tie it into your bow. Although, basically any limb-driven rest will work this way. However, if you have a cable-driven rest, things operate a little differently, and I can do a video on that in the future if you guys are interested. If you are, leave it in the comment section below. I would love to make a video on that. But yeah, in this video, it's going to be about a limb-driven rest. So with that being said, let's go ahead and break this thing out of the package and get to installing it. Alright guys, real quick before we get too far into the video, I just wanted to mention, if you guys are liking this content and like what our channel is about, please like each video. That really helps us grow. That basically tells YouTube that you like our video and that someone else might like our video as well. And it just basically, it'll make YouTube recommend our videos to more people. So if you could do that, that would be huge. That really helps the channel grow, and I would greatly appreciate it. As well as the absurd amount of support that we've gotten over the last couple of months. We hit 1,000 subs. We're already at 1,200 subs. We just want to thank you guys so much. And for that, and to give back to you guys, we have a completely free giveaway that's going on. So with that being said, make sure you go head out to our website. We are doing a free giveaway right now, completely free to enter. All you have to do is fill out a form and submit it, and that gets you entered to win. So yeah, please go check that out if you're interested. So with that being said, let's go ahead and throw this bow up in the vise, and let's mount the rest. Alright guys, so I have the bow mounted up in the vise here. I had a D-loop on here, like a temporary D-loop that I put on. I checked the axle to axle, the cam sync, and everything like that. I took that off just because I'm going to go ahead and mount the string level on. We're going to level the bow, and then we're going to open up the package and get the rest out of the package. I'm going to go ahead and level the bow now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up the rest package. So in the package you're going to have a little mount here. This is actually the Epsilon with the Matthews specific bracket. So you'll also get a little package here. It has the bolt, an Allen key. It has a little felt pad here for the blade, the launcher arm of the rest, and then you have two little rubber pads here which are for tying onto the limb itself, and then you have this here which is like a little arrow rest that you put onto the shelf of the bow. And then in the front of the case you have the rest itself. Now this has to be one of the best arrow rests on the market. It really doesn't get much better than this. The HAMSKEA Trinity Hybrid Hunter Pro, that was the best rest on the market, and then they came out with this thing which is basically that, just shrunk down and miniaturized in the best way possible. I mean that in the best way possible. It's just way more low profile, a little bit lighter, and definitely probably my favorite rest to date that has ever been created for a bow. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take our little bracket here that came with the package, and we're just going to line that up on the back side here. Basically it is machined in a way that as soon as you tighten it down into the burger hole, it lays flat up against the riser of the bow, and it is exactly 90 degrees perfect, and that's all you really need. And then it has a little dovetail on itself here that the rest will actually mount to. So all you do is take your bolt and run it down in there. Now I'm going to put a little bit of wax on the bolt just because I like to do that. Not a lot of people like to do that, but I think it definitely helps. Tex-Tite bowstring wax. I just use a little bit. It's like a kind of a softer wax, but you just want to make sure you start that by hand. Make sure that's not cross-threaded. It is a 3/16 Allen key, just to keep that in mind. And then I like to go ahead and just crank it down a little bit harder. You don't have to go super crazy tightening this, but definitely give it a good snug. And as you can see, that is tight like a tiger, and that won't come off. Now we are left with this little rail on the back here, which I'll pull you around and zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. Alright guys, so now that we have the bracket on here, we have a little dovetail on the back, and our rest also has a dovetail on the back. It's like a little clamp system that clamps onto that dovetail, and then we have a little brass post on here, and there's a little circle in the center of the dovetail back here, and that little brass post sits in there when you go to put this thing on there. You'll know if you put it on right when you go to put it on. It like doesn't have much movement really, and snug this piece back up. So right now you are looking at those two screws or bolts that we tighten up. Just right here, right here. We just go very light. We don't want to go too crazy torquing that down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my arrow. As you can see here, arrow, we got our level on it. And we're going to go ahead and install that and set it up in the bow. So what we can do now is set our center shot. Now our center shot is going to be 13/16 off the riser, or 0.81 thousandths of an inch if you're using a caliper or vernia like I am. I set it to 0.81, and then we go behind here, right off the front of the riser like so, and we just measure to the center of the arrow shaft. Now I am a little off. I'm going to have to push towards the bow, the arrow towards the bow. There's a little bolt that you crack loose here, and it loosens up the whole system. It's on a rail. You loosen that up, and then you can go ahead and loosen this up. And then just because I have the equipment, I'll use my calipers or my vernias, come over here and check it, and right there it looks like I am perfectly in the center of my arrow shaft. So that's exactly where I want to be. And then again, it's not super critical, you know, in the tuning stage. If I have to bump my rest to the left or to the right a little bit, depending on how my arrow tears, I can always do that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our vertical height. And the way that I like to do this is I like to set my arrow up level. I have my level on my arrow. I have my arrow installed in the bow, but really fast before I go ahead and make any adjustments, I check underneath here. I have forgotten this in the past, and it came back to bite me in the ass because then I had to redo the whole thing. There are two bolts on the bottom of the Epsilon rest. They basically adjust the angles at which the launcher blade sits. I like to keep my launcher blade at the top. When it's at the very top, I like to try to keep it as forward as I can, the angle as forward as I can. And the reason why I do that is because then when you're drawing back, it prevents the arrow from kind of doing one of these like little chatter bounces on the launcher blade. It just seems to really prevent that. And then when I go ahead and push this down, I like to keep this as low as it'll possibly go without really contacting anything. So with that being said, now we can go ahead and level our arrow. Then what I like to do is I like to get low and eye down the arrow from this point of view. And what I do is I make sure that my arrow is cutting directly through the center of the burger hole. And by doing that, that just means that your arrow is directly centered in the bow if it's through the burger hole. So I like to do that. I kind of have to move the camera in order to do this, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So by the looks of it, this rest definitely has to move up, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The bracket that you mount to the bow, and then the dovetail, the top piece of the dovetail on here, they actually seem to like to be flush. And I don't know why this is, but I noticed it on my bow too. No, it's just the thing. The Matthews, the brackets, these two like to be flush for you to set the perfect vertical alignment. So that's the basic installation of the rest. The rest is set now. This is where it wants to be. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and do some of the pro tips and then tie this guy in. Alright, so my first pro tip for this rest is if I take this and I push it all the way down, when the bow is fired and you know it's let down and the bow's not drawn back, do you see how this arrow doesn't actually touch this little rest that's on here for it? So we take this little piece right here and we install it in the front of our shelf up here. That way, when this goes and falls down, the arrow now sits in the rubberized shelf in the front and makes absolutely no noise. In a hunting situation, you know, you can have this down, you can be walking through the woods, and then on top of that, if you're holding your bow, you can actually take your finger and rest it right over the top, and it'll keep your arrow in place. And it's just a really slick system. and it works really well. So that's what I like to do. So I remove this piece back here. There's like 2 bolts that hold this little like arrow or attainment thing on here. I take those off, and then I just take this and I stick it in the front like so. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright guys, so my next pro tip that I have is actually changing out this cord that comes on the HAMSKEA EPSILON. Now, this is made out of like low stretch, like parachute cord or something like that. But it is a little thin, and what I like to do is I like to swap this out for some D-loop material. So this right here is number 24 BCY D-loop material. I like to use this and replace this cord with it. Just stiffer, and it definitely does not stretch at all, really. So I like to go ahead and replace it with this stuff. I got this at Lancaster. I believe it was like $1 per foot. I got 25 feet. It's definitely more cost effective to just get a roll of 100 feet of this stuff. But when I went to go get it, I believe that the black was out of stock, but it was in stock by the foot, so I just got it by the foot. But to start, I'm just going to go ahead and loosen up this clamp that they have on here and just take the string out. Alright guys, so I have my clamp off. It's right here. I don't lose this. Definitely don't lose this. Put it off to the side, and then I also take my rebound dampener out, and then I'll take all of the string, lay it up next to the BCY number 24 D-loop material, and then I'll cut my D-loop material a few inches shorter, probably like 5 inches shorter than the cordage that's supplied here. Alright, so I have my length of BCY D-loop material cut. Now I'm just going to go ahead and thread it back through my dampener here. Very simple. You just, loop, de-loop, and pull. And then I just give it a little bit of pre-stretch automatically. And I'll just take it and stretch it out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this installed back onto the HAMSKEA and throw my clamp back on around the top. Alright guys, so real quick, I just want to make a quick interruption. Before we go ahead and tension up our rest here, before we go ahead and throw that clamp system on and everything, I just wanted to tell you guys that before you do that, make sure you go head over to our D-loop installation video. You want to install your D-loop because before you tension it, your launcher blade on your rest will be up, and that will allow you to go ahead and level out your arrow and set your D-loop placement and everything. With that being said, let's go ahead and show you guys how to tension this up so that after you watch the video and after you tighten your D-loop, you can come back to this and finish up tensioning your rest. I put the side of the rebound dampener with the least amount of string. I'll take this and put it towards the bottom, and then the side with the more string I leave towards the top. And basically what I'll do is I'll feed it through this. Oh, whoops. To get that to fit, I had to cut a little bit of that ball end off, and then it should just fit up through here, come back around, and now I'm actually just going to melt that ball end again. And then we're ready to install our clamp. Now I like to leave the least amount I possibly can up top here. And you'll see why that is in a second. I'll back you out a little bit. As you can see, I only have about 3/4 of an inch maybe sticking out on the bottom of this thing. And the reason why that is because the closer you get the clamp and the string up here, the less like oscillation you have, which is this motion when the bow goes off. The tighter you get it up top, so that's why I do that. But we're not going to go too crazy yet because we still have to adjust the bottom. Alright guys, so now I have you looking at the bottom yoke system here. I like to tie mine in to this right here. It moves just as much as the axle of your actual bow. So there is no reason why you can't tie it into here. And then what we do is we take our rebound dampener and we feed it down so that we get as much slack out of it, and we bring it down so that it comes all the way down to here, and boom. And again, that just prevents the oscillation of this thing once you fire it. If you get this as close to the bottom as possible versus like in the center of it, it won't do that oscillation motion. Now we are going to go ahead and tie in our clamp, and we are going to tension our rebound dampening system. So the way that I like to do this is I like to get my clamp not all the way installed, but I like to get it over the string and just ready to go. And now the goal is you want to put a little bit of tension on the rebound dampening system, and you do that by grabbing the main line that goes down to it and pulling up. There's a little bit of tension on it, but I want a little bit more. I'll go ahead and pull it up like that, making sure that I maintain down pressure on this tag end, and that's going to clamp on pretty darn good to that cable. And then I'm going to come around to the other side, but all I really need to make sure is that when I flip the blade up, the launcher arm of the rest, if I flip it up and let it go, that it stays down. Alright guys, so that is essentially going to wrap this video up. That is how we install the HAMSKEA EPSILON rest. All of the limb-driven rests, most of the techniques used in this video can be used for them. And I am super happy with the way that it turned out. So now that is going to wrap up this video. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and throw on the D-loop and get that squared away. So if you guys want to learn how to tie a D-loop, make sure that you check it out. That'll be the next video up. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Ciao guys.